Hello and welcome back to Orsa Knits. In this episode I wanted to do something slightly different and take you along with me while I work through a week of my works in progress. I'm not one of the fastest knitters, but I've really tried to make time to fit in a little bit of knitting every day when I'm not working. At the beginning of the week, I like to try and make myself a mini schedule. Not that I always stick to it, but I find it does help me plan what I want to achieve. I'm usually a monogamous knitter, but since I've started my podcast, I've tried to have a few things ongoing at once. Sometimes I find I struggle to get something done, but it does keep the podcast a little bit more interesting if I have lots of things to show you. I like working on different constructions and yarns at the same time, but I do find I need to make sure that I focus on the progress that I'm making, otherwise things can take a bit longer than I intend them to. The final ball of yarn for my Scout Shawl arrived a couple of weeks ago. This is the stunning shade of Dusty Honey in Knitting for Olive Merino. I think the name really suits it. I've really fallen in love with all of the muted and slightly moody hues that Knitting for Olive has on offer in their merino, and I am quite happy that I settled on some colour combinations that I normally wouldn't have. However, it has been a little bit difficult to put together shades that truly complement each other. I thought I had completely settled on using the colours that I got, but the burgundy was just way too harsh. It almost looked like a deep black grey when put next to some of the other softer hues I'd selected. So instead I've decided to use up some bits and pieces from my really tiny stash and create a bit more of a faded or sun-bleached palette with lots of warm colours. After several frogged attempts, I think I'm finally a little bit happier with it now. Florence Spurling's Scout Shawl is quite a challenging piece for me. I would say I'm definitely an intermediate knitter now, no longer a beginner, but this did require quite a lot of research before I was confident enough to truly start. As the shawl combines both intarsia and stranded fair isle colourwork, I had to separate this pink shade into a few smaller balls, which are used to work the edges of the shawl. Now, I understand that you can get bobbins for this purpose, but I haven't been able to get my hands on any here, so instead I used the paper ball bands. They actually make quite a good alternative. This is the first time I'll be making a project with intarsia, but it's a technique that I've been dying to learn, as I have a secret little project I want to recreate in the next few weeks. All I'm going to tell you is you will see it if you watch the fabulous Netflix show The Crown. I had to watch and rewatch loads of tutorials before I was finally happy to start. Now I've got the hang of the basic intarsia technique and working my colourwork on the pearl side, I find I can get into the flow of the quite rhythmic colourwork very, very easily. And Florence Spurling's instructions in her pattern are really great for getting the neat finish that you want. This week I've also been trying to organise my crafting space in the spare room. I don't have much of a stash, as I previously mentioned, but it is lovely to see some of my yarn acquisitions up on the shelves, lined up all ready for my new projects. But I do find I'm super indecisive about where I want to keep all of my mini stash. I put them on the shelves and then I take them off and relocate them constantly. And I do reckon my setup will probably change a little bit more because I am just so indecisive about it. I'm lucky that this room is quite a blank canvas, so I'm slowly trying to make it my own. As we're getting to the end of summer and transitioning into autumn, I have a few ideas for some autumn decorations that I might want to make. And if you have any other suggestions, do drop them down below, because I'm hoping to compile a little list that I can talk about in a future video. Midweek marked a new cast-on, which is the gorgeous vest number 8 by My Favourite Things. I wanted to cast on something which was on bigger needles, just to give myself a break from the tiny 3mm needles I've been using for the Friday Tee. I'm knitting it in a new to me yarn, which is 100% merino from, I believe the company is called Laines du Nord. It's an Italian company and they have some really beautiful options This one is called Eco Baby, and it's in this really, really gorgeous shade of grey. I thought that the Kidsilk I'm pairing with it was going to be a little bit lighter to match it, but I'm actually quite loving this deep, almost slightly blue shade of Kidsilk. They pair really nicely together, and they almost give it a mild look, which I think is kind of reminiscent of marble. Yeah, the Merino though, I really, really highly recommend to anybody looking for a slightly thicker Merino. It's definitely more of a sport weight. It's such a relief to work on slightly larger needles. Even though this vest is still knit on 4mm needles, which are not exactly massive, it's such a step up from the 3mm I've been using for Petite Knit Friday Tee. This project is working up so quickly, and the cabling does add some interest to what is otherwise quite a straightforward knit. I have to say, like with many of her other projects or patterns that I've made before, this one is really, really clever, but I appreciate the classic simplicity of her designs. I would really recommend this project for anybody who is a beginner at cabling, because the techniques are really clearly explained and the effect is very, very stunning. I'm really excited to wear this as the temperatures drop, and I might pair it with a nice white or black turtleneck and feel like I'm getting some of those dark academia vibes. I chose to make this one in, I think it's a size small, or maybe it was medium, but I just went off my hip measurement because I wanted to make sure that there would be quite a lot of room for wearing a shirt underneath and pairing it with some comfy jeans. My boyfriend and I have spent most of our days this summer hiding indoors from the scorching sun. Rome feels like it's boiling at the moment, and the city is full of visitors again. On a cooler morning, we took a long walk around the fashionable district called Monti. All the faded yellows, oranges and pinks really come to life in the summer and look so bright against the blue, blue sky. We had a coffee and a tasty slice of focaccia on our way home. Actually, on Friday, I finished the final few rows of my Friday tee. Here it is, the finished object. I can't say quite how relieved I am to be finally done and no longer working on this knit. I know that sounds really awful, and it's not that it isn't an enjoyable and beautiful piece, but I did find the repetition of the broken rib stitch to be sometimes a little bit tedious when it's worked on such tiny, tiny needles. It took so much longer than I expected it to, but the finished result is really, really gorgeous, and the fact that it's worked in such a fine yarn and on such tiny needles makes it feel quite luxurious. The rib around the neck is really thick and folded double, which I think will give a lovely shape to the piece even after I've washed it several times. I might do something to try and firm up the ribbing around the neckline, because I know that that can stretch a little bit with wear, so I might do some research into a few techniques about how to firm that up. I've heard that sewing elastic into the neckband can help, so that could be something worth trying. I think the design of this tee is really very clever, and the broken rib does have great stretch when worn, so it really fits the body very, very nicely. The shoulder raglan increased section is made with these pretty line details that make the simple top a little bit more visually interesting. And as I've said before, but it does bear repeating once again, I am obsessed with stripes. The reason why I was really drawn to making this top was because it looked like such a simple yet well-constructed stripy top for summertime. But I do think that Drops Flora was probably not the best choice for it. Being a wool and alpaca blend, it is definitely a little bit hot to wear in 35-degree temperatures. However, it will look just as good paired under a blazer in the autumn, and these lovely brown shades will work really well for that. Another note for anybody interested in making this The images that I've seen of this piece online seem to be on people with a slightly smaller bust measurement, for I will say that the top hangs quite differently on them. I made this in a size S, as my bust is about 92 centimetres, but in retrospect perhaps I should have made a medium, because I do prefer a slightly looser look to t-shirts, and this one does feel quite fitted on me. I think it will probably loosen up with a couple of washes and with wear, however. On Friday, I was also really happy to receive my latest yarn order just in time for the weekend. One very exciting purchase I've been longing for months is a handy ball winder from Knit Pro. I love the look of the beautiful handmade wooden winders and swifts, but I wanted something that would be a little bit more portable for me until we're settled in a more permanent home. I've been really enjoying cleaning up all of my messy hand-wound balls. It's definitely an acquisition I would recommend for any serious knitter. The first full skein I tested out on this was this lovely mohair from Manos del Uruguay. I fell in love with this colourway as soon as I saw it. It's called Wildflowers and is a charming mix of purples, pinks and greens, which I think will make a really unique hat or maybe a pair of gloves. I'm still deciding exactly what I want to make with it, but the mohair feels extremely soft and the fluffiness is wrapped around one strand of polyamide instead of silk. However, the colourways were just so amazing that I couldn't resist getting some. Another exciting addition to my mini stash is this 100% linen yarn from Katia. I thought I would try this because it was on sale, and I don't think I've ever tried linen yarn before. The texture, not unlike the pure silk yarn I used on my last camisole, is quite tough and almost wiry, but I think it would make a really beautiful summer bag. I've been thinking a lot about pushing myself to explore new fibres and dye styles with my purchases, and I'm really pleased to be trying something completely new to me. I still feel like my favourites are softer and slightly more lofty yarns, but it will be interesting to see what sort of fabric this one creates. The yarn was listed on the website as a worsted weight, but I think it feels a lot more like a fingering, so I'm really hoping that it will still work for the lovely Brigitte bag by Gregoria Fibres. I'll make sure to pop in an image so you can see just how pretty this design is. I think it's so summery and feminine. My one other acquisition in this order is another lovely Laine du Nord yarn, and this one is called Dolce Vita, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Dolce Vita is a luxurious blend of wool, alpaca and mohair, which lends it plumpness and also a quite subtle halo that I just love so much. This yarn is about a DK weight, and I'm thinking it would make a nice cabled scarf, and I might draft the pattern myself. I reckon this would be a lovely choice for someone who wants some of the softness of mohair without the long hairy look that you get from just a strand of Kidsilk. I really hope that you're having an enjoyable summer, and whether you're on holiday or just getting in a little bit of knitting around work, that you're making projects that you really love. The summer has been very beautiful here, but I know I'm so excited for the cooler months ahead and all of the warm, cozy things I'm hoping to make. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you back on my channel again soon. Bye!